pilots, and welcome to something a bit different. This time, I'm sorry, but there's no gameplay, but something you might find just as useful, and something that I've been kind of wanting to do for some time. This is kind of going to be the first in many parts, and in these kinds of segments, you're going to kind of see all the ships that make up the GTA, the PVN, and the Shivans. From fighters, bombers, cruisers, destroyers, all of those. So we'll be taking a good look at all of their specs, weapons, defenses, and even look at some of the veteran comments from the Hardlight Wiki. So let's start off with the fighters, two fighters from the GTA, the ones that kind of started things off in the early days of the Terran-Versudan War. The GTF Angel and the GTF Apollo. Designed and built by the Han Ronald Corporation and classed as a recon fighter but also a light interceptor, the GTF Angel was not the greatest in regards to specs, and it was eventually modified and retrofitted to become the much more successful GTF Valkyrie. With a maximum speed of 65 meters per second to about a maximum of about 80, and then given the afterburner can push it up to 105 MPS. It was decent in speed though, and slightly faster than the Apollo by about 5 meters per second though, but unfortunately it was somewhat poorly built, with very light armor, no shields, and unfortunately it was easily destroyed by the much more advanced Versudan fighters at that time. When only armed with a single lane of 2 guns and a single missile launcher equal to only one of the Apollo's banks, this fighter did not have the best compatibility with newer weapons, and unfortunately it's mostly considered non-canon to the degree because you weren't able to actually play with this fighter in the game. However, in many of the mods that I have played, like Inferno and all that, you are able to actually play as this fighter, where you will actually see where this footage actually comes from. But this fighter did serve its purpose in that sense though. But in the early days of the war, this fighter was one of the best fighters that you could actually get in the GTA. Or was it? Also designed by the Han Ronald Corporation, and the newest and most important fighter probably of its time was introduced, and if you played the original game you probably know exactly what's coming next. The GTF Apollo is an exceptionally well known and probably the most common of all GTA fighters. When these guys rolled into service, the GTF Angel from that point was completely made obsolete and eventually mothballed until it eventually became the Valkyrie. The best part of a fighter like this is that it was a real jack-of-all-trades fighter. Although designed as a space superiority fighter, it was also used as interception and even as assault, and quite personally one of my personal favorites of the Freespace 1 fighters. With a maximum speed of 60 meters per second and an afterburn up to 140 meters per second. This little guy was actually armed with 2 weapon banks and 2 missile banks, so this was some serious firepower for its time and would make short work of the Versudan fighters to come for at least its time. This vessel was also equipped with much better armor and shielding, which made it a serious contender to do serious damage to enemy vessels, including capital ships, especially in numbers. Although when we actually look at figures wise, the armor and shielding of the GTF Loki from Freespace, Silent Threat and Freespace 2 was actually slightly higher than that of the Apollo. Interesting, isn't it? Yet funny enough, the Apollo lasted on the battlefield better. Look, in many ways, when we look at the Apollo, it was actually pretty good enough to actually play most of the game with this little fighter. It was exceptionally versatile, but unfortunately it did lack a lot of weapon compatibility. In my opinion, that's not the worst thing in the world. With the ML16 laser, disruptor cannon, the Avenger cannon, flail cannon, the Prometheus cannon, the Leech cannon, and even the shield breaker, it wasn't too bad. It could at least have some decent weapons to actually take out Shivans with. Missile compatibility, on the other hand, was actually much better than what we actually thought. The MX-50 missiles, Disruptor missile, the Furies, my personal favorites, Hornet missiles, interceptors, cluster bomb, and even the EM Pulse. So it's not actually as bad of a fighter as most players would actually think. True, it wasn't perfect, but then again, it's what you had to start with, and you had to get good with this ship very early in the game, because Freespace is the kind of game that does not like to hold your hand, and you have to do what you can to survive. But when I go into the veteran comments, they say things like the ship was vastly underrated, and I actually agree. Even after the Shivans arrived and really did so much damage to everything, you would think that a ship like this would become completely pointless. But still, this ship actually had a lot of advantages for its time, and even now, it's actually, funny enough, more agile than the Myrmidon fighter. And surprisingly, the Myrmidon can't even use dogfighting missiles, so it actually loses its purpose as a space superiority fighter. The Apollo could at least use the interceptor missiles. Now, and when you think about it, if you need a fighter to do a task, and guaranteed you're going to be thrown into a mission where you have no idea of what's actually going to happen, this fighter should actually be at the top of your list, because a fighter like this can actually do the roles of the Hercules, the Valkyrie, and the Ulysses. So in a bad situation, this ship is going to serve you pretty darn well. And look, let's face it, these fighters do have issues. Like if we look at the missile banks, they are so terribly positioned to be put on the wings. If you're using like heat-seeking missiles or aspect missiles, no problem. But if, like me, you're going to use the Fury missiles or dumbfires later on, the thing is, firing them from your wings is extremely hard to hit your target unless you're going after something very large or very slow. So you have that problem. Also, another thing is that if we looked at Freespace 2, where you got the Hercules Mark II, which was a great improvement over the original, the Apollo did not get one, which is kind of weird considering that this ship had served the GTA for so long. But then again, that's kind of how things go with these things. It was a jack of all trades, and it wasn't a specialized fighter like some of the others out there. But I don't know, what do you guys think? I'd love to hear your comments though in the comment section below. Please tell me, what kind of ship from the Freespace universe do you want me to do a video on? I always anticipate to see some good comments there, and I would really like to see something like that. And if you guys could, maybe throw down a like, maybe a sub. It gets me really motivated to keep these videos going, and also to actually put more quality into there. So the new videos are still in production right now. I'm currently working on the next two as we speak, but I thought I'd just get this one out as soon as possible so you guys can get a little taste of what's coming, and just so that it will get better with time. So if you guys have got any tips or anything, hey, please throw them in the bottom there, and I'll definitely take a read. Thanks so much, guys, and I'll see you soon.